My name is Kuntal Joyshar. I am a mountaineer. Thank you, Acharya ji, for taking time and giving us this opportunity to sit down with you and discuss about climate change, about veganism, and about a lot of other questions that we have for you. With me today, I have on the panel Niharika Raizada ji, a renowned actress, and my name is Kuntal Joyshar. I am a mountaineer.
I'm glad to be here.
So, I had this, thought where in the last 12 years of my climbing mountains, going on Everest and many other mountains in Nepal, in the Indian Himalaya, across the world, as I've been going every single year, I have been seeing that there are drastic impacts of climate change that I can see on the mountains that I'm climbing. Especially, let's say, around glaciers melting on the mountains. Like मैं Everest जाता हूँ, every year I see that the glacier is receding internally. Even the glacier at 8,000 meters, where temperature is easily about minus 25, minus 30 degrees, even that is losing ice and it is receding at that altitude where impacts of climate change should not be seen technically or scientifically. So we are seeing these changes. There are these glacial lakes that are getting formed that can have impact on smaller villages downstream. All these changes are happening, snowfall happening in weird times, and these things that are constantly happening. But then I come back to Bombay and there's no impact of climate change, or at least something that I really can't perceive. Sure, maybe there's a little bit more warmth in the climate or a little bit extended monsoons, but sometimes you feel, it's Mumbai climate, it'll just change up and down here and there. And so if I'm sitting in my bedroom and I am not kind of feeling any massive impact of climate change, but there is massive impacts of climate changes happening in very sensitive ecosystems like the Himalaya and like let's say even the Arctic or the Antarctic, which is causing a havoc across the planet where there are these floods happening and droughts happening and so many things that are happening. But sitting here in Mumbai, I'm not able to, everything's fine. What's this, big deal about it? So how can we take this concept of climate change and explain it to everyone in a way where people can start getting serious about it and start doing something about it? Because it's, if we are looking at any data points, then people are saying by 2040 or by 2050 this planet will literally be uninhabitable. So we really need to be getting serious about this and do something about it now. So how can we kind of, bridge this gap where I am seeing something in the mountains, but I'm coming home and can't, like have this question constantly happening. What can I do?
The first thing is to see that we are nearing extinction. It is not merely a problem. We have already entered the 6th mass extinction phase. It's a catastrophe worse than the Third World War that we sometimes metaphorically imagine to mean a deadly disaster of unimaginable proportions. No? When you want to say that something utterly terrible might happen, then you say Third World War. What's already happening is worse than the Third World War that might not happen. We are rushing towards our extinction. This is the 6th one I said, right? Of the previous 5 ones, 3 happened due to exactly the same cause that ails us today. Carbon dioxide. You talked of the receding glaciers up the Himalayas. And you said that's visible there, that's not visible here. You see, 2 things. One, because our senses can perceive only gross changes, therefore what is happening a bit subliminally we do not detect it immediately, right? I could liken it to getting infected by the HIV, right? It can stay in the body for long and then it erupts. It's not AIDS all of a sudden.
Right.
Or even the COVID virus, the disease that we all suffered so much from. It comes to you and the symptoms do not show up immediately. But when they do show up, they can be fatal. You said technically the layer should not recede so much there. Let me offer you an example. You'll find it interesting. In a place like Canada, just a difference of 5 degrees centigrade in the average temperature can mean the existence or non-existence of hundreds of meters of ice sheets. Just 5 degrees. Right? That which you call as the ice age. Actually, the average temperatures then were not too different from what we have now. Just 5 degrees. And 5 degrees mean unimaginably thick ice sheets or their absence. So if 5 degrees lesser can mean that the ice can get that large. 5 degrees higher would mean that all the ice can suddenly vanish. So what is happening up there and that which you saw is exactly what is going to happen. And when we say the average temperatures are already 1.5 above normal and they'll get to 3 degrees, 5 degrees, maybe even 6 degrees. We feel like saying, oh, 6 degrees is not much. After all, sometimes it is 24, at other times it's 30, 25 and 24 and 30 are both things that we have tolerated, even enjoyed in. So 24 and 30 don't mean much. They mean a lot. They basically mean that 80 to 90% of all life on the planet is about to go extinct. That's the severity of the problem we are facing. It's not about the kind of daily weathers that we experience. Oh, it's a bit humid today. Oh, it's raining without reason. Don't you feel a bit warm under the collar? It's not that kind of thing. We're not talking about the weather. It's climate change. Everything is going to change and the planet will become inhabitable not only for us but for all species that we know of. That's the extent of the crisis. I repeat, everybody needs to repeat it as many times as possible to as many people as possible. Mass extinction, that's what we are staring at. And we are quickly rushing towards it. That's what is happening. And the thing is, because we do not experience it on our skins immediately, so we feel as if it does not exist. That's the first and the most cowardly way of dealing with a disaster. Denial. Just deny it. It does not exist. We all want to deny things, bad things, when they first happen to us. No, this can't have happened. And then there are advanced stages of grief, and then there are other methods of coping with. But the first thing itself takes away so much time. And we have already lost so much time.
So like you said, there is denial. So it means that we know that it is there, it's going to come, but we tend to avoid it. So is it like there are problems that are bigger than that at present that people see and that's why they tend to ignore it?
No, it's just that if you accept it, then it demands action. Acknowledgement means responsibility. That's the reason why you find mainstream media giving so little coverage to the most important problem of our times. We talk of this, we talk of that. We don't talk of the thing that means everything to us. What you are seeing today, please understand, is carbon dioxide levels that we have not seen over the past 10 lakh years. 10 lakh years, it was never so bad. And especially to you. You just told me you are a 2021 pass out from IIT Delhi. Most of the carbon that we see in the atmosphere today has been emitted in your lifetime. After you were born. That's how lucky your generation is. That's the reason I want to talk more and more to youngsters. See how lucky you are. That's what we, the elder ones, have done to you. That's what we have bequeathed to you. Take it. Lots of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And that's going to wipe you out. Finished.
So where are the solutions? What can we do, being a millennial generation, being a Gen X, Gen Z generation, what is it that we can do? Like, for example, when the cyclone came this year in Mumbai, we were all asked to, post the cyclone, plant trees across Mumbai. And we all participated. All the people that I know participated. But it's not enough. That's, for example, not enough. To cut down the carbon dioxide amount, you just can't plant a few trees. You have to do a lot more. So what are the few solutions that our generation can implement?
First thing, obviously it is true, and it must be understood that we all owe action towards the solution. At the same time, a few data points have to be considered. It is around 12% of the world's population that's responsible for more than 80% of the excess carbon accumulated in the atmosphere so far. So if I start talking to the common man in Mumbai that you should do your bit, it sounds good in a moral sense, but won't be effective. It's the rich man in the rich countries, and obviously the rich man in the not so rich countries like India, who's contributing the most, who's the biggest culprit towards the climate crisis. So what do? We need to raise awareness to a point where it becomes an electoral issue. Obviously, we can do our own bit, not use a four-wheeler when necessary, fly less often, don't consume meat. We all know of those measures. Go solar, go tidal, whatever you can do. Obviously, a person cannot go tidal on his own. But so these are the things that we can do. But most of these are mostly feel-good measures. You'll feel that you are on the right side of morality. You have done your bit. The thing is, an effective change cannot happen unless it is at the policy level. And in a democracy, policies depend on the number of people who are sensitive to the need of policy change or regulation or formulation. We don't have sensitivity at all. So if you have any reach among the audiences, first thing is to keep shouting this in their ears all the time. You are happily sleeping in your little dark caves and you just do not know that there is a nuclear explosion outside. You cannot let this happen. So if you have an audience, if you have a reach, if you have people who would listen to you, that's the first thing to do. Without that, the common man would remain busy in his usual petty affairs. We cannot blame him for that. And when it will come to choosing a government at any level, even at a local level, he'll vote on largely meaningless issues. And the central issue will remain in oblivion. It means nothing. This has to be there on the front page of the newspapers. Has to be there. Constantly. Somebody has to, a lot of people have to wake up to it. The stats themselves are so terrifying that if they are brought out in the public domain, they are already in the public domain. It says that they are not getting publicized. Being public and getting publicized are two very different things. There is so much that is available if you want to look up for it. But nobody wants to Google for something as specific as the stats concerning climate change and such things. So we need to shout it out from the rooftops, and the stats have to be clear to us first of all. What are we doing? Where is it really coming from? What contributes to it? And how exactly are we a participant in it all?
Right. So I wanted to point out about that where you just said that what contributes to it. And at least whatever I have done the research and whatever reading I have done, animal agriculture is a very big contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions. Now, sure, there are very controversial numbers. One agency says, no, these numbers are not correct, or some agency says these numbers are not correct. But at the end of the day, every agency agrees that animal agriculture produces significant amount of greenhouse gas emissions, which is eventually contributing to climate change. In addition, there's a lot of land use, there's a lot of water use, there's a lot of biodiversity loss that a lot of these things are causes, which are indirect contributors to the climate change crisis. Now, you said that we need to make changes at a policy level, we should elect properly and those kind of things. But these lobbies are super strong. And these lobbies, like let's say meat lobby or the dairy lobby, or for example, even a lobby like car making lobby or the petroleum lobby, these lobbies are super strong, and they are also going to influence the elected members quite a bit to continue supporting these industries, subsidizing these industries, and continue contributing to the greenhouse gas emissions and a lot of these things. So what can we do in these situations where I as a person, like, it just feels like such an overwhelming problem to me. I look at this and I'm like, I can't do anything. All I can do is I can stop eating meat. I can be a vegan. Okay, I have been a vegan for 20 years. I'll stop flying. I will stop. I don't even have a car. I travel in a metro as much as I can, travel in public transportation. So I do a lot of these things. But anytime it comes to the election or the electoral politics, I'm like, I can't do anything.
No, it's not that way. Please see, the tobacco lobby used to be equally strong. And for a very long time, they tried to obfuscate the ill effects of tobacco on health. But then there were concerted attempts, people got together, and ultimately we had regulations on tobacco. There were taxes, there were prohibitions, and they continue till date, and we have been able to mitigate the ill effects of tobacco on human health. That could be done. This too can be done. It's just that it's not getting into the public conversation. I just read that 63% Americans, and why do I quote America? Because countries like America are the ones worst responsible for the state we are in today. 63% of them admit to never having even discussed climate change in their households. Now that's the problem. That's the real problem. And why do we not discuss it? Here the thing gets interesting. We do not discuss it because the discussion challenges our very basic philosophy of life. You see, what is the philosophy that we are living in our daily lives? We are saying more is better. We are saying if you want to be happy, you need to have more goods, you need to have better furniture, bigger cars, you need to fly more. How about $500 million yacht? Things like that. So that's the philosophy that we live. Not only the common man, from the common man, that philosophy becomes the philosophy of the governments. So how do the governments, for example, measure their economic success? They talk about GDP. What exactly is GDP? GDP is just the same thing. How many more goods, transaction-worthy goods, is your economy producing? Now, basic things that make life richer are not really amenable to monetization. Because you cannot monetize them, therefore they do not even count towards the GDP. Right? And it is the GDP focused approach, it is the material happiness focused approach that is at the root of the climate crisis. We keep on saying the country is producing more and more, or my income is getting higher and higher, therefore there is welfare. It's another thing that what GDP successfully hides is a lot of inequality. We said the top rung of people, the very elite in terms of money, 1 percentile, top 1 percentile or 5 percentile, they are the ones contributing in the heaviest sense to this crisis. But they are also the role models and aspirations for the remaining 95%. We all want to be there. And that's a philosophy that has been taught to us. The climate crisis is a product of a wrong way of living. We have been conditioned. We have been taught a wrong philosophy. And that's the problem. And the problem is deeper because your generation sees no alternative except that one philosophy because it has not been exposed to anything else. The work that we are trying to do of taking Vedanta to every household is therefore something that is striking at the very roots of the climate crisis. And all these are related. Veganism, climate crisis, loss of biodiversity, extinction of species, you name the problem, and what you'll find is that the same philosophy, philosophy of material happiness, is at the root of all of them. And therefore you cannot solve any single one of these problems without really addressing all others. And if you have addressed all of them, and all of them are intersectional, they all touch upon each other, then you have to go to the very base. Is more really better? Are we benefiting from that? When you say GDP is great, and for example Moody's just said India is not going to grow at 7.6%, it's going to be 6.8%. And there was a lot of hue and cry, oh my god, country is not growing that much. The fact is that the average income of the most disadvantaged section has not risen by much over the last 30 years, even in India. Whereas the top 1 percentile has gotten richer by more than 15 times. Inflation adjusted figures. Wow. So what is GDP doing? It is taking an aggregate. It is presenting to you an average in terms of per capita income. What it is hiding is that what averages successfully managed to hide, that the averages have been pulled up only by a handful of people. And the vast majority of people is actually remaining at the same levels where it was a long time back, or actually the levels have fallen. That's what GDP is hiding. So it's not even that we are getting even materially more prosperous. First thing is material prosperity giving us what we really need? What are the costs of material prosperity? Secondly, are we getting even materially more prosperous as a human community? No. Only a handful of people are gaining in wealth. All else are just wallowing in their old positions. So we need to take up this discussion with the young people especially. How do you want to live? What do you want to live for? What is your core philosophy of life? As we used to say in IIT, funda kya hai tera? What's the fundamental you want to live by?
So I have a doubt here. Like we all started from a point जब हम early man थे, cages में रहते थे. Then we started technological advances. Develop होके हमने इतनी सारी चीज़ें बनाई just to live a life जो कि बहुत peaceful हो. Now when we have these things, we are saying that हमें minimalism की तरफ जाना चाहिए. तो फिर there are two options. या तो हम ऐसे technologies develop करें, for example the solar panels ones, जिसमें कि जो भी चीज़ें रिलीज़ हो रही है एनवायरनमेंट में वो हमारे ज़्यादा हार्म ना पहुँचाए, या फिर वी लिटरली लाइक गो टू अ पॉइंट जहाँ पे हम चीज़ों को फिर डिस्कार्ड करना शुरू करते हैं. वी गो बैक टू द सेम लाइफ वेयर बहुत ज़्यादा मिनिमलिज्म है. सो व्हाट शुड बी द अप्रोच?
We need active economic degrowth. We do not need so much of consumption. What was the consumption for in the first place? Why did the early man come out of the forest, out of the cave? For what purpose? You must remember the purpose. The purpose was not that he was not getting enough to eat there. No animal ever starves in the jungle unless man interferes. Right?
Yeah.
You don't really have pandemics in the jungle. Again, unless man interferes. So jungles are actually quite nice places, and man was all right there in the physical sense at least, right? We do not die of hunger, heat, food, thirst, starvation. That does not happen usually in the jungle. And if that happens, to that extent it happens even in the cities, right? We have people dying of starvation on footpaths. That happens even in the US. Even the US have people who are ill-fed, right? Why did we come out from the jungle in the first place? Because there was something that could not happen in the jungle. There were conditions not really suitable to that particular thing. What was that thing? We wanted to develop ourselves more. We wanted to have more peace, as you said. Huh? Did we really get that by coming out of the jungle? Or have we failed miserably? The intention itself has been defeated. When we were there and now that we are here, are we really better off in terms of the intangible thing that we wanted? Tangibly, we have gathered a lot.
Yeah.
Tangibly, obviously, we have gathered a lot. But that intangible thing that we were so desperate for, I dare say, so much in love with, could we manage to secure that? No, we didn't. So not only do we need to minimalize, we actually need degrowth. A lot of things that we are using, we do not need them. They have to be discarded. A lot of the industries are simply wasteful. They do not need to exist. The world, do we really need huge military complexes? Do we really need these huge slaughterhouses, animal agriculture he talked of? Do you really need those industries? Huh? A lot of the cosmetics industry, for example, are these things actively needed? You have to ask yourself these things. Textiles, garments. Do we really need so many clothes as we use? Huh? And there is just so much, The carbon emissions of the US military are larger than that of several other nations combined. I'm not talking of the emissions of the militaries of the other nations. I'm saying you pick up the Scandinavian nations, for example. The emissions of the entire country are lower than the emissions from the Pentagon. What's going on? Do we really need all those things? Do we really need to fly as much as we do? In a country like India, how do you justify flying from Delhi to Chandigarh? Or from Delhi to Jaipur? I do not know whether we have flights from Mumbai to Pune.
We do.
We do, I think.
And
we
to
do.
Surat as well, and many other places in Gujarat.
I'm not sure. And if poor road infrastructure is the reason, we better ramp up that infrastructure. The kind of carbon footprint when you fly is tremendous. So I liked it. We traveled to Bombay via train this time. We had a camp in Goa. We again used the train. Once the flight and then the train. Obviously, it's not all that convenient. But that's the minimum you need to begin to do. And that's just the minimum. That won't suffice. There is a lot more that we actually require to do.